following Answers for Elders podcast features author, innovator, Alzheimer's and dementia family coach, Faith Marshall. And welcome everyone to another 4-part episode on Answers for Elders podcast network as we are talking to dementia and Alzheimer's expert, Faith Marshall. Faith, welcome back to our program.
Thank you, Suzanne. It's always a joy being here with you.
It is great for you to be here too, because obviously there's lots of things happening in the world. And as we get back to, there's fall in the air and certainly lots of things happening with families, and they've been through summertime and now they're inside and seeing their loved ones, obviously. And many have had, our seniors, sadly, a lot of escalation of Alzheimer's and dementia due to a lot of depression from the pandemic, from, being quarantined for so long and all of these things. And so I know, Faith, for us, we're getting a lot of phone calls of, I don't know what's going on with my loved one. Whether it's a scenario of they're refusing to bathe, they're refusing to, take care of their everyday, daily activities, things like that. And so, I'm really excited about today's podcast because we're going to be talking today about communication with those with Alzheimer's and dementia. I think we as families get a lot of concern about, frustration. We don't necessarily know how to reach them in the best way, especially because we don't understand the mind as it's on dementia. And you certainly have done a lot of research in this area. So tell us a little bit, Faith, if you would, just kind of give us a background into the mindset of someone who has Alzheimer's and dementia.
Well, that's a hard task to meet.
Sorry about that.
So I think it starts with the label of a diagnosis. And when a patient is diagnosed, everyone is confused and everyone is in fear. Mm-hmm. And we somehow detach the person from the diagnosis, and we're dealing with, that label of dementia or Alzheimer's, and that's where most of families' questions come from.
Right.
So what we need to remember is, just like you went to the grocery store and you just forgot your list, and so then you couldn't remember what was on your list, mm-hmm. It doesn't change who you are.
No, it does not.
You just forgot.
Good. Right.
And what I see happening is we start to deal with them because of our own emotions being on that roller coaster that just happens naturally. We start to detach from the person.
Right.
So what is really best is remembering who the person is and meeting them there. And you and I have talked about this, meeting the patient where they are.
Right.
But if you think of it from a perspective of that person is just forgetting. They're not in charge of, making these choices that they're forgetting something. It's just happening. Just when you forget your grocery list.
Exactly. Well, and I think also there's a perception with the individual that has Alzheimer's or dementia that they're not being forgetful, that they remember things differently. And it isn't that they're rewriting history intentionally. It's the fact that how the synapses is not connecting in a normal way. Right. So it, like you said, their individuality, who they are, what they like, what they dislike, never goes away. And I think one of the things that we as families need to remember is, what is it that we can do to make sure that we always honor the things that are most important to them? And I think that is, maybe in the early stages, we start talking to them about, little things. Like I remember I've talked to another dementia consultant a long time ago, and they talked about the fact that how many times does a senior go into a memory care unit and they don't know how they took their coffee? Maybe they would like coffee in the morning, but they like 2 lumps of sugar instead of no sugar.
Yeah.
and it's not necessarily, we may think that that's an unusual thing, but I think one of the things that is really important for families to do right up front is to make sure that we're on the same page of what are our loved ones likes and dislikes,
Yep.
do and how many covers do they like on their bed, and because there will come a day likely that they won't be able to speak for themselves, and this is
Exactly.
something that best thing that we can do as family members is to honor that. And
Yep.
so, a lot of what you're saying is absolutely accurate.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that up. There's an excellent book called The Memory Keeper.
Love that.
I can't remember the author off the top of my head, but
Della
it's
Street.
yes, it's a great way for people ahead of time to I gave a copy of that book to my friend who had cancer who wanted
Mm-hmm.
her grandson to remember her so she could write down answer all those questions of the things that
So
would help him
important.
know who she was.
Mm-hmm.
And so it has many more uses than just dementia, but
Yeah.
it's like a journaling prompt, and it asks questions that you don't think to tell someone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And like you said, so if you're in an environment and you like your coffee with 2 creams and 1 sugar, and they give you black coffee, you just don't want it, but you can't tell them why. You don't even know why.
No.
It just doesn't taste right.
Right.
So person-centered care is the key here for trying our best to help the patient feel as normal as we can help them feel.
Mm-hmm.
We need to put ourselves aside and focus on them and giving them choices that are choices that they would, like to make, an either or. I've
Mm-hmm.
said many times it's like dealing with a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
Do you want to go to lunch or do you want to play in the park?
Yeah.
Emphasize the one that you want them to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Should we take a shower before we go out to lunch, or do you want to eat here?
Yeah. Yeah.
And in a way, it's you're in charge, but you're allowing them to feel like they're in charge.
Well, and it comes right down to the mindset of allowing them and honoring them with dignity.
Yeah,
It's like they are a full person, whether they're in no matter what stage they're in, and that is one of the things that I think a lot of times families get frustrated, not because they don't love their loved one, because they do, but they feel like they're in a scenario where they are um, so frustrated trying to communicate that it can come out as frustration or anger towards that person.
yeah,
And it's not, it's just the fact that that person doesn't have the synapses connectors in their brain to be able to process what you're telling them. And
right.
so, I always say to families, it's like, if you feel a sense of frustration, leave the scenario. I remember taking care of my mom, and I would walk around the block. She was in a skilled nursing facility, but she had dementia, and she would say things. She still knew how to push my buttons, even when she was more advanced. She would say things sometimes that would just, I could just feel the blood boil, because she was pushing my buttons. And I had to learn to take a breath and say, Mom, I have to run a quick errand. I'll be right back. And then I dealt with my issues later. I had to realize that, I had to move out of this mindset and to go on a walk to get out, release yourself from the situation, even if it's around the block to laugh or to move. It is such an important part of making sure that we as families stay centered through this process.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because something else that happens that most of us aren't aware of at the time is when something triggers us,
Mhm.
our energy changes. Our whole energy field changes. And
Hugely.
pets always react to that. Most
Mhm.
of us have experience with pets
Mhm.
not understanding why we're tense, what's happening, and then they start following you around. Well, for humans, we try to, step back. So you're trying to accomplish something with a person
Mhm.
and you're trying to force them into doing something. It doesn't, at that point, what you're saying isn't what matters most, it's your energy.
No.
So taking a walk, walking outside, breathing, whatever can help you get back to having that loving heart that is
Mhm.
the most cooperative energy to be in, then their response will be better.
Right.
And focusing on them and realizing you're putting yourself aside. It's not time for me to deal with my emotions, like you were saying.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's time for us to, figure out how to get mom in the shower, or how to help her understand, that this is what she needs to wear now. Mom didn't like wearing pants that didn't zip up, but pants that zipped up were not conducive to that environment.
Right.
So changing her to elastic waist pants and leggings was a shift for her, because in her mind, she was still in corporate America, dressing up for
Mhm.
work,
Mhm.
and she was still going to work in the nursing home,
Mhm.
but with
Exactly.
sweatpants.
Well, and it's all about perception, and I think one of the things that we need to think about in this hour is kind of some key things to remember. And I think one of the things that I would love to close out this segment with, Faith, is I always there's a little book out there called The Four Agreements, and I don't know if you've ever heard of The Four
Yes, I
Agreements.
have it. Yes.
But one of the things, it's one of my favorite books of all, and it's truly, I would say, one of the best books for family caregivers, because one of the things of the four is take nothing personally.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, this is not a personal thing towards you. And so understanding that you're just on different wavelengths and how to come and build a bridge. I think one of the things I would love to talk about the next segment is what are some key points that we can look at as we move forward in, communicating with a loved one. What do you think about that?
I think that's great.
Oh,
Thank you.
that would be great. And so everyone, again, Faith is here. We are talking again about communicating with someone with Alzheimer's and dementia, and how can you be a better communicator and also take care of yourself in the process. So Faith will be right back right after this.
Thank you, Suzanne.
We would like to thank you for joining us in this podcast. Faith is here to support you and your family on this journey. She will help you to come together in harmony, creating the best team in advocating for your loved one's care. So call Faith at 855-363-2484 to receive a $200 gift card just by mentioning that you've heard these podcasts. Again, that number is 855-363-2484. And guess what? That spells Faith, 855-3-FAITH.